Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my humble little broadcast today. But I have actual star power and a really famous person on my channel today. So you don't have to just listen to me ramble like normal because I brought the wonderful Made by Jimbob with me today. How are you
Howdy.
doing, Jimbob?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm so happy to have you here. If you guys do not know, Made by Jim Bob is a wonderful cartoonist and a live streamer, an actual comedian, and he's also a musician. He's kind of like one of those good at everything people. So tell everybody, Jim Bob, where they can find all of your work normally.
Normally on YouTube, made by Jimbob. You can follow there if you're not already there. I'm down for another week and a half. Got flagged for something. Instagram, made by Jimbob. I'm on Gab, made by Jimbob. I don't really do Twitter too much, but I'm on there, and so those are the main. Or you can go to my website, madeby.jimbob.com, of course.
I didn't know that you were back on the Twitters, so
It's just really, it's not my thing. It's like Twitter's like it's like American Idol competition for headlines. So if you're a good writer and you can write really good headlines, but then the thread starts and it's like a headline battle, and I'd rather just put it all into a meme and then not have to respond to it.
maybe that's why I strangely do well on Twitter. Like maybe I'm just good at writing like obnoxious or provocative, like short little chunks for
Mhm.
people. I
Mhm.
always say Twitter is the worst place to really get to know what I'm about, but it's a good place to find me because I make everybody mad on there.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you guys want to see Jim Bob until he's back on his normal channel, he will be streaming from the Crucible Limited channel Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right?
Right. Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for
well,
that.
yeah, absolutely. No problem. We're happy to have you over there. So, we decided that we wanted to do a stream on motherhood and technology. And I bet some people read that and thought, well, what does motherhood have to do with technology? Well, you're going to get to hear all the horrors and wonders of what how technology might be changing motherhood. Everything from the surrogacy boom to artificial wombs to birth rates and all the single childless women out there. So we're just going to go over some of these thoughts. You guys have probably seen Jim Bob do a lot of like technocracy and technology type of streams on his channel if you watch him at all. So we're going to kind of talk about this, and I have some interesting little tidbits that I found. Well, some of it is stuff I've known for a long time, but it's like rare that I get a chance to put it all together into something like this. So we'll get to take a look at that. But give me, Jim Bob, your kind of like overview of like why you thought this would be a good topic.
Well, because it overlaps with technology, and I do talk about technology, and obviously it's usually the most ridiculous things like the VR sets and whatnot. But there's certainly an impact. I mean, being a parent, having technology in the house to some extent, relying on it sometimes, abusing it sometimes. It's a good topic as a parent, as a fatherhood, as a father, and so obviously that would apply to motherhood as well. And so what I'm kind of looking at the framework of this is to what extent we outsource parenting, in this case, motherhood, whether it's surrogacy or the artificial womb or, over the shoulder milk jugs where men can breastfeed in public. And it's just, this kind of stuff. Technology is not going to stop. And so the utility aspect of technology is just going to keep going. And it's always kind of in tension with tradition. And the technology doesn't tell us what kind of traditions we ought to maintain. It doesn't even tell us how to balance between the tradition and the customs and the technology. It just is. You just use it or you don't, and then we have to figure out where the line is between using it too much, where it starts to invade some of the very important tasks for a father, just in general, labor. Our identity as fathers, as providers, is tied to our labor. Even our relationship to other men as fathers is tied to some level of what we do. It's such sort of like a, not a sinful pride. I don't mean it like that, but like a point of respect. And so that would apply to mothering too. So how you keeping a home, raising your children, whether you outsource your education, whether you homeschool, whether you let a robot take over some of the basic tasks in the house. Maybe it's going to be very helpful for people, and then they get more time because they have this robot that does this thing that they don't really like to do. Well, I would say there's a bigger problem here that needs to be looked at is what is the value of doing the things we don't necessarily want to do? And that is entirely related, for those of you who are parents know, that we do a lot of things we don't feel like doing. And a part of the value as parents and the part of the value that our kids get are from those tasks that we could quite easily outsource more and more as technology is thrown in front of us.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I talk about all the time and bring up in debates all the time is that there's a reason why the feminist revolution didn't really, the ideology and the temptation to be like a revolutionary feminist has always been there since the very beginning of times. But there's a reason it didn't become the dominant thing until after the Industrial Revolution, because technology started to make it possible. Prior to that, women could not delude themselves into thinking, oh, we don't need men, men are obsolete, right? I mean, there was nobody who could do a lot of things besides men until automation. I would say that we are actually still under a huge veil of delusion when it comes to that. I think modern women are definitely under the impression that like everything is mechanized and automated now, and that they think that men still just like are pushing a button somewhere to pave roads or do underwater welding or something, and there's still tons and tons of jobs men do that are dangerous, difficult, labor intensive, that keeps this modern facade going for us. But it's like people don't see it because they're on the user end of it all the time. They're not like Andrew crawling under, he used to have to get into spaces in food production facilities to fix robots. Like people don't think about this. The robot, the giant 2-story machine controlled by a robot breaks. Well, some guy has to get in there and fix it. And that was the end. Sometimes they have to put like special gear on him because they're like, well, if you get trapped down there, there's no oxygen and you'll die. So you have to like, and the space would be barely wider than he was, and like super dangerous stuff, which is why he was able to make a pretty good living at it. But
now he debates. He fixes robots by debating them.
Basically. Well, I always say like I feel like he's completely earned a little bit of a less dangerous way to make a living. If anybody has done it, I feel like he has. But it might surprise people to know that the technology will solve all our problems and get rid of all the bad things we have to deal with has been around for a long time. And some of the earliest like feminists and progressives had this theory that technology was going to make gender obsolete. It would make motherhood obsolete in the future. It was going to eventually erase sex distinctions at all. Like maybe in the distant future, we can completely overcome human nature and the human condition via technology, which is kind of what technocracy is all about. So with that, let's see if I can figure out how to not have a woman moment and see if I can share the screen. I know everybody make fun of me, everyone.
Jimmy James says chess feeder 3.0. Yeah, that's going to be it'll be in Target. It's probably already in Target.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably the first place it'll be. Okay, little computer here. Let's go to Lord Birkenhead first. And I don't really need to share audio, but I will. There we go. And we tried at it. It's taking a second. Okay. Can you guys see that?
We can't read it, but
I don't feel like you can. It's so small. Well, I will just read you the little part that I wanted to read you, but this is a book that's on the archive.org, where you can find all the really old books. I love this website, use it all the time. And the Earl of Birkenhead was a British elitist who wrote this in 1930. It's a book called The World in 2030. And it was all his predictions for how much progress we were going to have in 100 years from his time. He died not too long after he wrote this, actually, I believe. But it's actually very funny because he starts his chapter on women like with total misogyny, which I find hilarious. I think other people would probably find it horrifying, but he basically says even the best women are totally inferior to like one genius man, and women are great and all, but he's like, really they're just there to be wombs. And he laments about how he can't stand housewives who don't have anything to do, like they just the more wealthy housewives that maybe have a lot of money and only one or two children. And he said they're always bored and stirring up trouble and gossip, and we need to give them something to do. And he's envisioning a world where he says science will help out this women's liberation stuff. He said in 2030, the prospect of women's liberation from the dangers of childbirth will almost certainly become a matter of general realization. This evolution, the most serious biological departure since the natural separation of living organisms into two sexes, of course, there we have our Darwinian theory, which was so popular in, he's Oxford, Cambridge, all these things at the time, will vitally transform the whole status of women in society. Unless their present importance and limitations be clearly apprehended, their future development cannot be apprehended. And he talks about how in the future, it is certain that scientists will one day succeed in producing a living human by such technological means. This process will be known as ectogenesis, and it will be violently and furiously opposed by the spiritual descendants of all those who now attack contraception. So in 1930, contraception was this big deal. We didn't even have the pill yet. They were working on it, creating it. But even diaphragms and stuff like that, like they were putting people in jail for distributing diaphragms and cervical caps and things like that. And there was a huge kerfuffle because most of the feminists were very much for it. There were a few who weren't, because they thought it was going to produce a rise in sex work and promiscuity. Shockingly, they somehow figured that out. But this guy says, that we're going to, in the future, have ectogenically born children. They'll be made in labs. We'll have some kind of artificial womb. And he said he even predicted that at first these children created this way would be rejected by society, but that at some point they would start mingling with the normally created children, and then it would become more acceptable. And he's explaining how he thinks this will be a wonderful leap forward because we won't have to allow women to stay home with kids and all this motherhood nonsense. We can get them into the workplace. And this is why I say it's funny. He was oddly promoting women's lib, but at the same time also being like the worst, most hilarious misogynist, because he said the reason we should do this is if women don't have to have babies anymore, they can take over all the dull tasks that the men shouldn't be doing. Like we can make them do all the low-level laboratory work and the data entry and all the piss poor jobs that the men don't want to do. And then we'll have more men in like higher tech jobs and things like this. So it was kind of funny. He thought we'll create like a slave class of women who will no longer be mothers and instead be clerical workers. And to me, this is hilarious because if you look at the top 20 jobs held by women now and the top 20 jobs held by women in 1920, 100 years ago, they're almost the same. We've convinced generations now of women to abandon motherhood so they can have boss bitch careers. And do they get the boss bitch careers? No, the vast majority of them don't. Most of them aren't Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City. Most of them aren't Beyonce. They are waitresses, nurses, preschool teachers, bookkeepers, maids, retail workers. They're doing the same stuff they did 100 years ago, only now they're paying, probably 30% of what they make in daycare and another 20% to taxes. And instead of submitting to your husband, you're submitting to some corporate boss instead.
They're in debt, and in debt as well.
Yes. And average $36,000 in college debt per woman now. Fantastic. But I just thought it was very interesting that even, in 1930, when feminism was like the first wave feminism had gotten suffrage passed, and it was the roaring 20s with all the flapper girls had just happened. This is like the peak of first wave, I would say, right around 1930. And the elite men of the time are going, splendid, splendid, we'll have plenty of free and cheap labor, and we can, all the men won't have to do all this menial labor anymore. We can make the women do it, and we'll just have some lab somewhere make the babies. I don't know how close we are to that. This is the other thing I think to keep in mind through this whole thing is the scientism people are constantly telling us, self-driving cars are right around the corner. Flying cars are right around the corner. Drone package delivery is coming tomorrow, right? They're always kind of overestimating, I think, what they're going to be able to do. Because this is 100 years ago. He's saying this will be already the case by 2030. That's only in 7 years. Now, could it be? They're still saying this. They're still predicting this. We'll look at a couple news articles that still say this is going to happen. I'm not so sure. What do you think about the ectogenesis babies? Are we going to have them by 2030?
No, I don't think. I think you're right. They try to fluff this up a little bit more. It actually helps with the funding and resources. It's kind of what Elon Musk does. He kind of like he moves confidence around in investment categories. And so I think that's what some of the writers were doing, whether they meant it or not. Even Aldous Huxley. I wonder who was influenced by who. The writer you mentioned, because in 1931 Huxley came out with Brave New World, and of course it opens with the hatchery. So the problem here that you even mentioned, how the guy you were referring to, at the same time he was being sort of women's lib, but at the other end of on the other hand, he's just utilitarian, turning the women just into slaves somewhere else. And I think this is a problem with the problem with utility and pushing technology for the sake of technologies. You have no telos, you have no real purpose, you don't have a meaning for what it means to be a human being, let alone a man or a woman. And so they look at it like it's a technology. And so I think we'll see more of people looking at motherhood, like growing a baby, as a technology, because from that Darwinian view, you're just a mechanism. And so they'll try to sell the body as just a machine, which they already do. But wouldn't that would apply to growing a baby? The meaningfulness of a woman carrying for 9 months, that connection, the bond, the any of the pain, any of the ecstasy that's involved, whatever it is a part of some process that's deeper, has a deeper meaning and purpose than just being a machine. But so they can't really win this war because it's on a false starting assumption, which is to say that humans are just technology. And so all of our activities can be replaced with robots or machines, as if the value of the activity, whether it's a man's labor or a woman's labor, literally labor, whether those activities aren't the value in themselves. There's more to the value of being a mother and bringing children into the world. And that's why it's inevitably a spiritual fight against Christianity and the proper universal categories of man and woman, child, and the hierarchy that's tied to. Otherwise, what do you have? So that's why it's going to fail. It's the same reason the 15-minute cities kind of fail, is that it's based on a false premise that activity, consumption, and moving parts is what we're here for. And it just doesn't work, because even the most deadened atheist still appeals to something higher, like morality. Even though they reject God, they appeal to meaning in purpose and love and all of these things, because we can't. That's built in us as well. You just can't capture it in a chip. And so I think it's going to fail. I think all of their promises fail, but they're useful to what they're selling, which is a lot of it's the same with NASA and stuff. They sell the next big thing we're doing, and it gets people riled up. And it's really just what's called an availability cascade machine, where they just move the confidence over to some other wave, and then they repeat the previous waves. Because people like you or Jay look back and go, oh, this is not new, you guys. This is the same pattern over and over again. And you just look at it, it's just sold new. People have different clothes now, and they have better watches or something. It's
Yeah, Lord Birkenhead was in that same elite British circle as the Huxleys and the Darwins and all these guys. They were all a bunch of sit around and pontificate in their smoke-filled rooms at Cambridge or Princeton or wherever they were, and talk about how they're, because after Darwinism really became the dominant thing, the scientism kind of replaced religion, especially in England. I feel like Britain is special that way. I feel like the British elite have their own special brand of technocratic horror that they like to do. And I feel like as soon as Darwinism became the thing there and dominated the universities, they really believed that it was their job to steer evolution, because they thought technology was actually making humanity devolve, that we were getting weaker, softer, easier to kill. And so it's up to us as the scientists to steer the evolution now, right? Now that we know how this works, clearly it's our job to steer the technology. And this is why, along with birth control and all this stuff, you always get eugenics with this stuff every time. It's always, and that's what he was talking about in this as well. It's like, oh, well, the natural birth has all these drawbacks and risks, and you never know if you're going to get a deformed baby. And so in the future, with this ectogenesis and scientists in labs creating the babies, they'll be able to, they didn't even know about DNA yet, but they did foresee that they thought they'd be able to genetically engineer people. Remember 1930, if y'all remember what was happening in the 30s in Europe, in a lot of the universities and scientific institutions, you guys might remember. We don't want to say it on YouTube, but that is where this was headed. This was like, we can create this, workforce, this stable population of people who won't be a burden on society. And they were really good at selling it as like an answer to all the problems of the time, because in 1930 there was still, they had just finished World War I and all the horrors of trench warfare and people actually starving and suffering from all kinds of disease. And he actually brings up how after World War I there were a lot of places like France that didn't have enough men. And he said, well, if we can do this, that won't be a problem anymore, because we can just make more, right? And if we have to lose the, 50% of the male population of our country in a war, it's fine. We'll just plan ahead and make some extra. Yeah, we'll just make some ectogenesis soldiers to replace those ones, and everything will be fine. And then he also strangely predicts how this will make the family and marriage obsolete. He said, in this time in 2030, people will no longer think, oh, you have to have a mother and a father and they have to be married and have the babies. No, we can just have any sort of sexual situation that we prefer. And he doesn't say, this is 1930, so he can't quite say, but again, in 1930s, Berlin, London, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, there was every bit as popular of a Tom and Bob's bar scene, if you know what I'm saying, back then. And they thought this would also make that much more acceptable for people, because, well, if we can just make the babies in a lab, why do we have to have heteronormative couples? Why do we have to have marriage? Why do we have to have mothers or fathers? We can just have citizens. And he curiously, I believe, used the phrase global citizens. We can just have global citizens now. So we don't have to have nations or boundaries. Again, anytime we look back at this stuff, Jimbob knows, you always end up with, we can just get rid of all these boundaries and these rules and these truths, right? Why do we have to have all these restrictive boundaries and truths? Why can't we just make babies in a lab, and then if 3 dudes want to live together and raise the baby, why not? And you do see people now in our present day arguing for that exact thing.
3 men and a baby.
Yeah.
Is pre-programming. I think that it gets rid of, it's like, if you take the logic to its end, why would you need meaningful relationships either? Like you would just slowly destroy that as well. Of course you can't destroy that desire for a human being, because we're not just machines after mechanical movements in the world. We're after strong bonding with people, but meaningful bonding towards something that has a standard, and what that standard is. When they remove that and they just make the standard, it's almost like it's just like they shoot themselves in the foot. To us, we can imagine the horror that could come and might likely come from some of this stuff, but it's all, again, it's the reminder is that as vivid as we could make this dark future, the sort of Black Mirror approach, we always have to remind ourselves that this is based on falsities. It's on a false premise about what a human being is. So it's always going to fail. They might succeed here and there with little things in the populated areas with the secular populations, but even those people, look at now, like, you get the two short-haired women who are like, we don't need traditionalism. Then the next moment they're starting a church, right, and a family, and they're
demanding to get married.
Yeah, exactly, and that's key because whatever utility technology provides as a convenience, it doesn't answer the question of what's your praxis. And so humans seek praxis, meaningful praxis, and so the tech doesn't tell you what that is. It might necessitate some obvious practice, like you're online doing stuff and doing thumb wars on the screens, but like a larger question of like meaningful. What does it mean to live a meaningful life, a good life, a life with purpose, with someone you call your loved one, whether it's kids or your wife or husband. And they want to remove these, but they're not really removing them, are they? They're kind of reframing what they are. And that ends up being sort of one of their lies, too, is that they think they're getting rid of universal concepts and truths, but they're just shifting and redescribing a way of looking at something that includes more people. And that obviously basically unravels the fabric of a cohesive culture. And so we're unfortunate because America is already sort of built on it's not really cohesive as far as our traditions, and we're young. So we're kind of vulnerable to the tech era and the younger generations running with this technocratic pushed concept of the tech's going to save us and give us all the free time in the world. Just put the helmet on and live in your own conjured state of bliss. Sounds great, if you're, 15 or 22, but after 25, you start thinking about different things, and certainly they won't be able to provide those things.
Yeah, well, actually, that's kind of the next little part he goes into, which will kind of lead us into the next part of this that we're going to talk about. This is an interesting little short passage. He says, ectogenesis will quickly enable men and women to be paid equal wages for equal work. Now, this is 1930. And people think like this is new rhetoric or something. This is 100 years ago almost. Men and women will be paid equal wages for equal work, since the women of an ectogenic age would soon be as capable of continuous industrial employment as their brothers, husbands, and fathers. It is not suggested by this that women will ever be fitted for such tasks as iron puddling, riveting, or navying, nor will they need to be so, because by 2030, such heavy labor will be entirely performed by machinery. But by achieving economic parity with man, the woman of an ectogenic age will accomplish the feminist dream of equality in the only possible way. Until man and woman are capable of identical functions in the industrial and commercial worlds, all legal provisions which place them on equal footing are basically unfair to the man. It is this fact which hinders the feminine champions of the present day from realizing their ambitious and irrational program. I can console them with the assurance that they will obtain all they desire in an ectogenic age. I think it's so fascinating that we can go back almost 100 years and hear the same arguments, the same rhetoric. Now, this guy is totally dunking on feminists, which is why a little part of me finds him pretty hilarious, because he's saying you're completely delusional. But he does push this line that eventually the technology will make us the same. Eventually the technology will mean that, men can't just do everything, and the women will be on equal par with the men. So
it's given, and it's like assuming that if a man holds the same shovel as a woman, that it's equal work. The closest you're going to
Right.
get to men and women being equal in their work is creating two identical robots and painting one pink and one blue. You're not going to get it with reality. You're not going to get it in the biological reality at all.
Yeah. So should I choose Chrome tab when I'm sharing this, or should I do, yeah, I suppose I should.
Either.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see if this one shows up to where you guys can actually see it. Do. Does that look as crappy for you as it does for me?
Yeah.
Shoot.
But it's okay if you read it. I mean, I don't know if people are going to read.
I'm trying to show it so people can take screenshots and like see what it is.
You can try hitting on under your StreamYard screen. You see all those windows. Change it from the two people with the box to just the box, and they'll hear you talking, but they won't see you, and it'll probably be a little bit bigger.
Okay. Let's try that. We'll add this back, and then maybe this one.
That's the first one.
No, that's
the last one. The last one. Not
this one.
Yeah, that one. Yep. Maybe that's clear. I could read that, but
okay. Well, here's some cringe for you guys. This is called The Rise of the She Economy. It's not bad enough that they had to come up with herstory instead of history. Do you remember this when they changed history? Story.
It's already outdated too, Rachel. It's got to be the economy in like next year.
So. Yeah, that's true. Well, this is The Rise of the She Economy. This is only 6 months old, and it's a Morgan Stanley article where they did all this, like a big survey and took a bunch of data, and it says, in the past, education or lower paying occupational choices largely drove the pay gap. Today, motherhood is by far the largest contributor to the wage gap, since women who become mothers often choose to stop working or work fewer hours. Clearly a problem that we have to solve, right? So this says, in the coming years, another demographic trend could help further close the pay gap, which is clearly all that matters. In the U.S., the rising ranks of single working women, based on Census Bureau historical data and Morgan Stanley forecasts, 45% of prime working age women, ages 25 to 44, so that's like basically your motherhood years, will be single by 2030, the largest share in history, up from 41% in 2018. So they're saying by 2030, almost half of fertile women are going to be childless. And they're saying this is a good thing because, well, now we can have the, the she economy, which is kind of what Lord Birkenhead was talking about. This idea that we're going to, outsource the motherhood so that the women can be workers, because that's so much more important. We need a bigger GDP. I've been told by Republican women. There was a staffer for Candace Owens a few years ago I was arguing with on Facebook, and she told me I should be ashamed of myself. Having 5 children is incredibly selfish because that prevents me from working. And I could be out there contributing to the GDP.
You could be the next PragerU ambassador if you didn't have so many kids, Rachel. Come on.
Basically what this woman was telling me. And I'm like, you'd think this is the leftists saying this to me. Don't be fooled. A ton of the TPUSA, PragerU, all the conservative business women are just as against everything I talk about as the leftists are. But this is supposed to be a good thing, that motherhood is the cause of the wage gap, ergo get rid of motherhood. So
and by the way, the cause of the wage gap is a woman choosing what she wants to do. So in a way, it has this liberation element to it, where a woman could choose to work or not. We could discuss whether that's good or not, but the very choice is what causes the disparity. And so they're arguing for this woman's choice. But when the woman makes the choice, it was like that one study that Peterson used to refer to. I don't know if it was in Switzerland or somewhere, where they tried to do this egalitarian experiment where they just let everyone just choose whatever they want, and the disparity was still right there. The women
Right.
chose one thing, and men generally chose another, and that created
Yes.
a disparity in income.
Yeah. And so this is what the problem is that there's a quote that I use at the very end of my book by Simone de Beauvoir, which, if you guys don't know, she was a French existential feminist philosopher. She was the partner of Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre. Horrible people, absolutely terrible, awful people, child groomers, everything else. She said in an interview with Betty Friedan in the 70s that we cannot give women the choice to stay home and raise their children, because if there is such a choice, far too many of them will choose that. She knew that. So she said, we got to get rid of the choice. We have to tell them from a young age, you must go to school, you must go to college, and you must have a career. And if you don't, you are a loser, you are weak, you are not doing what you're supposed to do. And the reason this is so effective to do to women is because women generally we tend to be more agreeable. We want approval. We like the pat on the head. You might be surprised I'm that way. I like to make the people around me happy. I like for everyone around me to be comfortable and happy and feeling good and safe and all that. It's my like motherly instinct. So when you grow up as a little girl and you're constantly having it beat into your head that motherhood is icky and boring and it's going to destroy your sex life and your body and it's going to make you poor and miserable and motherhood, yuck, right? This antinatalist propaganda is so effective. It scares the crap out of women. And then we tell them men are going to abuse you. They can't be trusted. Look at how they are. So you have to have your own money. You have to have your own security, your plan B for when the marriage inevitably fails, like we all know that it will. So this is all stuff that for 100 years is all tied together. It's all very like pre-contrived and put together by these huge NGOs and places like Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley is an investment banking firm, right? So I mean, of course they want bigger GDP, more women working. It means more interest. It means more loans. It means all these things for them. So the people who are kind of at the top trying to do all this running of everything and all this engineering of society do not want women choosing motherhood and staying home because there's nothing in it for them. Now, there's plenty in it for society, for communities, for families, for, you know, the people in the family. Think of all the things we've lost to women being in the workforce. You used to have like I was talking to Pearl yesterday, we were talking about how different our lives would have been if we had known the things we know now when we were 16. And she's like, I would have just left high school and like gone and got married and had a family and I'd be so happy. But she's like, I was pushed to be an athlete. I was pushed to have a career. She's like, I didn't find this stuff until 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I had made a complete and total mess of my 20s and then took most of my 30s trying to recover and fix the mess so that I could have a good family life, and my whole life would have been different. But we had it beat into our heads from the time we were little that this is what you must do. Don't rely on men. Don't trust men. Don't get married. You can't count on that. That's for dumb girls. That's for the girls that smoke and put out and get pregnant before graduation day, right? Like this is just like the propaganda that was thrown at women so hard for the last 40 or 50 years. And
that's just the fear aspect. Look at the reward, the carrot part, the culture of the badass Beyonce woman. Utilize your sexuality; it's your greatest tool. Get what you want using it. This kind of thing, where you're pulling women and taking what's good in them and trying to get them to put it into a marketplace, so to speak, to get what they want. And then, of course, you have the explosion of like, you know, sex workers, OnlyFans, you know, the CEO dream. I'm going to be a star one day. This kind of thing. That's also pummeled into them at the same time. So there's the fear it's like a two-prong attack. One is the fear of being poor and being alone, and the toughness and the loneliness of motherhood and all of this. But and the other side is, don't you want this other thing that's your glorious, your Prada bags and the Instagram accounts and the big glasses and the giant hats, and who knows, you might be a guest on Aubrey Marcus one day. And it's like, it's such a lie. Both are lies. So you push two lies at the same time, and you squeeze them, and they make the choice. They make a third choice or something like that, and it's hard to battle, honestly, because it's so prevalent. You mentioned before the Industrial Revolution, why all of this, this mass production of things kind of like took a bite out of labor in general, and purpose, and then convenience comes, and then you're in the state of luxury, and the state of luxury pushed with like a classical liberal, hue, where you're like, go pursue yourself, go find yourself. Women are especially prone to go find yourself, eat, pray, love, this kind of thing. It's very like, it calls the woman. The man is more like, go conquer, be a man, go Andrew Tate style. The woman is like, go find your truth, speak your truth. And you have that in culture, in movies, in entertainment, in both right and left politics. Yep. It's all about this classical liberal approach to be the superstar individual you are. And right. we'll celebrate that. You're your own icon. Everyone's their own icon. And it's such a perverted view of things. But it's rampant and tech makes it rampant because it's everywhere. You just pick up your phone and look on Instagram. Like almost everything you'll see, unless you're pretty controlled with what comes through the feed. If you go outside that controlled feed, it's all sort of this self-congratulatory, both men and women. This pride. It's like a giant pride parade. And it's hard to break for kids. You have to kind of guide them through it, and that's where parenting comes in. That's where motherhood is important as well in the home. That these things get kind of controlled, and if they are exposed to it, they have a parent that knows how to properly framework what the kid is seeing or experiencing.
And honestly, people will ask me this all the time because it's a very it's a logical question to ask when the entire culture is saturated with the pro-feminist message. We all know, like, the basic narrative goes, women were oppressed, life for them was horrible, slavery, it was terrible and oppressive, and for all of human history, women had the worst lives of everyone until 1920, and then they got the vote, and then things started getting better, but we still have a long way to go. And how come it's cool for boys to sleep with a bunch of people, but it's not for girls? And like these tropes that everyone hears, you hear them your whole life. They're reinforced through every pop culture medium. Name a pop star, name a female pop star who isn't doing the sexual liberation shtick. All of them are. Even Lizzo, even the ones that weigh 400 pounds are doing sexual liberation nonsense. And so everybody looks around and they go, well, this is what everyone says, Rach. You're the only person I really hear who's saying that this is like wrong. Why would everybody make this up? Which is why I had to write the book to explain that, the history has literally been changed. That's number one. So from 1970 on, when the universities got a hold of this, when I say they gatekeep it, I mean, literally, they have the actual physical papers from, all the early feminists, from Margaret Sanger, from Planned Parenthood, from, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, all the suffragettes. They have the physical stuff. You have to request permission to go look at it. I found a whole document I'm going to go over in a future stream from a professor who he actually took a look at, I want to say 33 different textbooks over the course of like 70 years and found how they had actually just taken out the real history and just omitted it. By 1970, there was no mention of the anti-suffrage movement, no mention of all the terrible PR that the feminists had or any of this. So now we are in a time where people just don't know the real history. They will boldly assert incorrect stuff because they've heard it retold from gender studies professors, right? So people say to me, Rachel, why would you want, women to not vote? And why are you so mean to women? And why do you think this? And where do you get all this from? It can't, everyone would know about it if it was true, and they wouldn't. And here's the reason why. So you wonder, why are they pushing all the women to OnlyFans, to Instagram? Sell your booty pics, sell your feet pics, sell all your pics of anything, brand yourself, right? Every young woman is now trained to have branding, to have social media. This is my brand. Even just normal girls who are like working an office job have branding on social media and sell themselves as a product. The reason for this, and the reason they want the promiscuity, the reason they want to get rid of traditional marriage, the reason they want free and easy divorce and lots of sex partners, is very simple. You lose the ability to bond with your husband, and you lose the ability to bond with your children when you have lived that life. I have seen this happen to women around me, where the more they drink, like the wine mom phenomenon, alcoholism is at like an all-time high among American women. Body counts are at an all-time high. Girls are selling pictures of their behind, parts for $9.99 a month. Elijah Schaefer always talks about hoflation, which means like, since there's such saturation of pornography and OnlyFans, it's not worth anything. So the average girl makes like $130 a month off of that now, and they're still doing it.
Yeah, there's the other part of that is when you get rid of the standards, the only place you can go is bigger and more disgusting. And so when that hoflation happens, I mean, we've seen this with art and architecture and everything else, is that when there's no standards, what do? Well, you puke on yourself. Really? Right. I mean, what do? You go into a room and, you make it crazier. You make it more, it's the jackass
more
effect,
shocking.
Except, yeah, exactly. And so you go that route, and that's horrible. Now, this is an interesting topic because I only mentioned this briefly on a stream about deepfakes, is that even though it's completely horrifying that deepfakes this year into the next 5 years will make basically faked pornography ubiquitous for anybody. Now, there'll probably be some regulations and laws and whatever, but the thing is, it has this weird effect where it has the inflation effect where the value and the leverage that would have would go down because anybody could make a fake image or video of you or whatever. So suddenly it doesn't have that same thing. But the bad effect as well is that's you could say like a short-term okay effect where, okay, this doesn't have any power anymore, but it'll also be completely saturated. Everything will be saturated with fake videos of people. Anything you can think of them doing, you could make it with a technology. And even if someone knows it's fake, the effect is going to still be there. The impact is still going to be there because it's imagery. It's like Satan's iconography. And so the imagery of people, it'll be people with some sort of weight, some sort of social or economic impact. But that's horrifying. And you, like either way, it seems to be bad where it's not enough to saturate the market with this stuff so that the actual woman is no longer needed. So, for instance, as deepfakes and this AI stuff increases in its capabilities and it's how convincing it is, the OnlyFans desperate girl who's doing the $9.99 also won't be needed as much because the simp will potentially, if it's convincing enough, just take the custom created fake version of the OnlyFans girl. Now, the girl might still sell their likelihood and license it, and then there'll be this like tie-in with, it came from a real person, though. It's not a total construct. It's really Cindy, but it's not Cindy. And that'll be kind of gross, but it'll be interesting to see where these sort of desperate feminist OnlyFans girls go because they can't go crazier necessarily. They can't really top the shocking content that a custom creator can produce with AI. So how is that going to play out? I hope it pushes women away from it because they'll go, well, it's no use. I mean, people will be able to conjure up any imagination they want in that form. and they won't need the girl to be in her room doing whatever for $9.99. So, but where do they
Right.
go though? Right? Hopefully they go back to motherhood. Hopefully there's this rejection because how horrifying and disgusting it's going to get, and they just move away from it ideally. But if they don't and they maintain sort of this secular view where there's still going to be a superstar, what are they going to do when the simp chooses the custom AI and doesn't need to negotiate anymore?
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm hoping like you that it pushes women back to wanting, maybe all this deprivation of human connection will at some point have a boomerang effect where now having your own babies the olden days way will be like the cool thing. I don't know, because motherhood, childbirth is painful, and there is the risk now is quite low, but there is still some risk associated. So I don't know. I'm hoping that won't happen too much, but that kind of brings us to our next thing, which is a couple of things. One is this boom in commercial surrogacy. So this is there's a little article here from CNBC that says the global commercial surrogacy industry grew to an estimated $14 billion in 2022, and that by 2032, that figure is forecast to rise to $129 billion per year. That's insane. And we're seeing it right now in places like Georgia, Ukraine, Mexico, anywhere that's kind of war torn or poverty stricken. A lot of women now, instead of doing sex work, are actually turning to surrogacy work. And I don't know if you guys have a guess as to who the main market of people who want to buy babies is, but it says that infertility issues are increasing, and a growing number of same-sex couples and single people are looking for ways to have babies. So since we are a little bit in this brave new world of, okay, we've mostly destroyed the family, like half of children are being raised in a home without both of their parents. A lot of marriages end in divorce. A lot of people don't even bother to get married anymore. And women are under this illusion that they just don't need men. They'll just do a Chelsea handler and order Thai
Oof.
food every night and,
Oof.
have a little purse dog or something instead. But then they do get older. And this is another thing I wanted to bring up, because an astonishing number of women think that IVF treatment is like this ace in the hole. Like, I can just wait till I'm 45, and by then I'll have so much money from my fantastic career and all the money I saved not having kids or getting married that I'll just buy myself a designer IVF baby. Well, only less than 1% of women who undergo IVF after 40 actually conceive and have a healthy baby. I don't think people realize that it's not what they think it is. It's very rare. It's hard to do. It's extremely stressful. It's hard on your body. It's super expensive. It's like what, 10 to 20,000 a pop, I want to say, depending on what your fertility issue is. But a lot of clinics don't even offer it to women over 40. And
And you
we
still
have
have to.
women think they're going to wait until 45 or 50 and then just hit up an IVF clinic and just have a baby. And it is not like that. They think this because they see celebrities, having babies. And a lot of the celebrities are doing surrogacy. Elon Musk has used surrogacy. Kim Kardashian, I believe Gwen Stefani did with at least one of hers. I could be wrong about that. But a lot of these celebrities are doing IVF and now surrogacy because they are waiting until they're 50. And you can't
It's
even do IVF.
And also, they're forgetting that you actually still have to be a parent after that happens. So that's a whole other aspect. The whole framework of it is perverted because, and it's not just the technology. We can probably discuss, like, is there an instance where do you do that? I don't know. That's an ethical thing to explore. It's just
Yeah.
that the context you can see is very, very much like an accessory. It's like, should I buy a bag this year or buy a baby? Should I, and
Right.
it's kind of like, in a way, I don't want to say the term, but affecting. It's like affecting a little
Yes.
bit,
Yes.
and it's bizarre. And you see, and again, it's not partisan anymore because Dave and Dave. Did you see all like PragerU and Tapusa and all? Oh, this is glorious, and it's like, no, this isn't something you champion within this context, right? You don't like. like, God forbid that you would need extra technological help to have kids as a man and a woman who are married and ready to start a family. This thing as like again, like I said in the beginning, they're going to turn, especially with the help of Elon Musk, they're going to turn procreation into a technological category as opposed to a religious category.
Yeah.
It's a theological category, something that's so transcendental and beautiful and beyond our thinking, beyond rationality. They're just like, no, no, it's not. It's naturalism, and it's just a mechanism that we have, and we're able to outsource the mechanism. Now, what you guys wondering, when you hear Elon Musk and we go, oh, even Elon Musk is saying how great, he's saying population is on the decline. Those damn vegans, haha.
Right.
Well,
Right.
watch what you champion, because Elon Musk will be the new, the confidence man for the outside baby sacks, right?
Yes.
And so why would he be concerned with underpopulation? It's certainly not because he's a traditionalist and he's trying to regain the traditional family values of Christianity in the home. No, he's going to have an answer on the other side of that, and he's going to probably be fully invested in those external sacs. What do you call them?
The artificial wombs, yes. He's already
Yeah.
working on that. I've got an article on him too, but first I want to read this in a funny Ukrainian accent for my own amusement. So you guys may or may not be aware that Ukraine has been a center of human trafficking, for a while. The trafficking industry there thrives. It's one of the global centers for that sort of thing. They are also now the leader in surrogacy. And this is, they're interviewing a woman in this article named Olga Pisana, and she is a partner at Ukrainian surrogacy agency World Center of Baby. Not kidding,
Olga
it's called World Center of Baby, where we make baby for you in the West. You have lots of money, we make baby.
Pisana?
Yes. Olga Pisana, yeah.
All right. Okay.
She said in Georgia and Ukraine, commercial surrogacy programs cost around $40,000 to $50,000, while in Mexico they're about $60,000 to $70,000. That compares with an average of $120,000 and higher in the U.S. So a lot of wealthy Westerners are once again going to these places to make baby. We make designer baby for you in Ukraine. And I wondered when this stuff popped off over there, I was like, they're never up to what they say they are, right? Whenever you look back on a war 30, 40, 50 years later, there was always some other shenanigans going on that you didn't know about at the time.
Always. Mm-hmm.
Always. So I'm like, I wonder if this has anything to do, because they said because of the war, we had to quickly come up with an alternative because there was so many people suddenly coming here for these designer babies. And I thought that's a little weird.
It's like Halla baby. Instead of Halliburton, it makes sense. Like you can direct that a war occurs, and if you had an investment in some sort of construction firm or rebuilding, well, wouldn't this kind of surrogacy or this push button IVF system, right? If it unfolded the way they dreamed it would, wouldn't it just be inside of rebuilding, right? Along with the technology and along with all the NGOs, they would just include this as their platform. It's like, oh, sorry, we had a war and it was terrible, but we flattened everything. By the way, Black House not only is going to rebuild everything in this smart city, internet of everything, but they're going to actually give you a 15% off code to push button print a baby for yourself. And then you create the city with the highest performing, this is eugenics. It's like the highest performing seeds, let's say. But this is why these systems, they need to flatten things, because it's too hard to work against existing cultures, heritages, thousands of years old. You're dealing with like Japan, basically. That would be like the best example I can give of like an ancient culture that's whose ethnicity and people are one thing. Not so much in America, we can't make that tie as much, but it's way harder. It would be way easier to flatten Japan and build new and have all of these new technological things than try to like infiltrate. They know how hard it is to infiltrate people. Yeah. They do make babies and families, and sometimes they don't hold together as well as they'd like, but they're certainly not starting from scratch and doing this sort of like, like getting a family is like you can get a family after you go to the Mac store, basically. Like that's kind of how they're looking at it.
Yeah. Yep, it's just another like consumer product. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we started the stream with. The world in 2030 was in 1930. The British elites were already looking to the future and going, yeah, in the future, we're going to get rid of the family and motherhood and all this stuff. And everybody will be, this is amazing because this is kind of what I'm working on 2 books. So sorry about that. That's why it's taking me so long. I've got one coming out this summer and then the other one will probably be in the winter because it's ginormous. And I've been working on it for 1.5 years. But it's about the Bolshevik feminists and how that revolution was funded by the same Wall Street guys who were doing all the feminism stuff here in the West. They just used totally different tactics to accomplish the goal, and they were kind of testing to see what worked. And Bolshevik feminists wanted women to, they said they had pamphlets that would say Russian women need to stop looking at themselves as mothers and start looking at themselves as labor units. And this is the same thing Lord Birkenhead was saying, and this is the same thing that Morgan Stanley is now saying, which is basically, and the big question that always comes to my mind when feminists argue with me, they go, well, yeah, but my kids will be fine in daycare and your kids are fine in daycare. Daycares are great. They're educational. We can make better daycares if the daycares aren't good enough. And I'm always like, who is running the daycares? Okay, me as a mom, you want me to leave my children so I can go have a job. But that means that someone else has to watch my children. Why don't you want that person to also have a career and freedom and their own money? And the secret is because it's not about that. It's not about that at all. They don't want Rachel to just have a higher standard of living in her own security and her own savings account in case Andrew runs off with a Marlboro mama or something, like they're always hoping he will. It's not because they care about me or my freedom or my quality of life or my security. No. Because they know that for every me who goes off to work, some other person will have to watch my kids. Even if you're having the artificial womb babies and the surrogacy babies, who's going to watch them all? Who's raising them? Someone still has to raise them.
The one who's raising them are the girls who are sold not to have babies because it's taking away their liberation, and there they are taking care of children. It's just not theirs. Yeah, it's funny.
Daycare worker is one of the top. So in this top 20 jobs that women still hold that are exactly the same after 100 years is like preschool teacher, elementary school teacher, daycare worker, nanny, all these sort of things. And it's like, I remember being 20 and thinking this is a wildly inefficient way to do things. Like this was just my first thoughts when I had my first daughter. I'm going, wait, I go to the job, send my baby to the lady so she has a job. This seems backwards and I don't understand how this makes sense. But just me questioning that, even at that time, and we're talking 2001, was like the women around me lost their shit. My mother wasn't happy, my mother-in-law wasn't happy, my sister, my friend, everybody was like, well, you can't just stay home. And I was like, why? Well, because you're smart and you should be doing something with your life. And I'm like, yeah, raising
smart
person?
Kids. Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah, that's the other thing. The powerful woman, the most powerful thing to do. It's like, yeah, let's get rid of all of them and make them work for Nike. And then who's raising the new generation of the smart kids? Well, no one is, because the smart women are not having children. So who is, and then you're, someone needs to have children. Now, I want to go back quickly to the outside. I keep forgetting the term, the technical term.
Artificial womb?
Yeah, the artificial womb. The kind of irony here that we'll see is that as viability, as the artificial womb pushes, and these technologies push viability close to conception as possible, which would agree with the the general religious view. It'll be interesting to watch how the abortion advocates deal with the technology that also supports some sort of like empowerment, push button, have a kid, but at the same time, it will push the viability of a human being and a human life back maybe as close to conception as possible. And suddenly they have no more argument for abortion. So suddenly you have two things happening at once. One is this huge push by Elon Musk and all of the big honchos in the game are going to be pushing this artificial stuff. And you can have a designer baby, you push button anything, blue eyes, what do you want, this kind of stuff. At the same time, people will be having more kids because it'll be clear that viability is closer to conception. So the religious people are going to be right, but and then the secular people and all the feminists are going to have to concede to it, but they're also going to maybe shift the goalpost at that point, I think.
Yeah, and I think that well, I don't want to take complete credit for this because there's probably someone somewhere who thought of it before me. I just haven't heard anyone argue this, but I think it was Nikki versus Zen Shapiro on the Abobo question. And there's a little clip of it I have here on my channel of me when I called in, because I had just been reading this article about the artificial wombs. And I thought, I bet you if I call in and ask this choice advocate, I called in and I said, they're telling us they're going to have these artificial wombs within the next 6 or 7 years, that they've got a prototype already and everything, and they think they can do this. So let's say that your hypothetical lady with the unwanted pregnancy walks in to the Abobo clinic at, 12 weeks or 8 weeks or something. And they say, we have great news. You no longer have to have this Abobo because we can take this embryo, fetus, whatever you want to call it. I call it a baby, but call it whatever inhumane term you want. And we can painlessly, with no detriment to you, transfer it to one of these artificial wombs, and you don't any longer have to terminate this potential human. I'm speaking in their language, guys. I don't
right. Exactly.
And I asked her, what would you still advocate for termination? And she said, yes, she would. And I said, why? And she said, because it's still her choice. And I'm like, wait, didn't a man help her? Didn't a man help her make the baby though? What if he wants the baby? What if he says, no, I'll raise it. You never even have to see it or look at it. I'll raise it. Just please don't kill it. She still doubled down and said the woman should still have and I'm like, right. So this is about nothing. You can drop all the pretense now. You can drop all the nonsense and take your mask off and just let us know that this is all just about you wanting to sacrifice infants. That's all it is. Because if this does happen, basically there is no longer an argument for
there isn't
choice.
Yeah, it is. It's completely demonic. They just get off on the power. It's like the people, like, they could give the food to maybe the person right there who might be hungry, and then just out of the sheer power it is to throw it away anyway because it's their choice to. It's theirs. This kind of ownership where you get to destroy things just because you have a sense of ownership and pride of the choice. It's sick. I mean, it's really disgusting because even when, like you said, you give her all of the proper circumstances and conditions that and even in her language, that potential life could be a human being in her language.
Right.
Still no. So it's about something else. It's not even about utility. It's some spiritual attack where these people are exhibiting a really strong rage against life itself or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I try to explain in my book how this really, feminism is not, we want choices for women. We just want women to be able to do what they want. We just want women to be able to do stuff. No, it's not. And the only people who think that are people who've never really read in depth the writings of these women who came up with feminist theory. You can go back hundreds of years and read all the way from then till now. It's the same spirit behind it. It's the same ideas. It's the same rebellious revolutionary spirit that is just rebelling against God's order and against God the Father, the concept of a father, any concept of patriarchy. It's literal hatred of men. That's what it is. I can prove it. I have proved it. But that aside, let's bring up this other fancy little article I have here, because you did bring up our friend Elon Musk. And I know you guys, I'm on Twitter all the time. And I know that a lot of you think it's great what he's doing for Twitter. And, like in an isolated vacuum, is what Elon did for Twitter good? You could probably argue that it is. But hold on, let me see if I can figure this out. I'm such a boomer. Oops, that's not the thing. There it is. Still can't see it very good, can you?
If you go way right and hit the widescreen with no little heads, it'll remove us. There you go.
Okay. So, Elon is not your friend. Are there isolated good things that can come from him letting us stream live to Twitter, letting us have, not be hidden by the algorithm? Yes. But that doesn't mean he, as a human, and all of his ideas and all of his motivations are pure. And this will kind of help you understand a little bit of why he's doing what he's doing. He has said that he wants Twitter to be the everything app. He wants it to be the place you go for everything. It's kind of the same idea as like the smart city and all this other stuff. It's going to be the place where all the data is, that's why some of this testing with like limiting tweets and some of this stuff. But anyways, in late 2021, Elon Musk tweeted his fears about the end of humanity. We should be much more worried about population collapse. If there aren't enough people for Earth, then there definitely won't be enough on Mars. Now, he's right when he says population collapse is the problem. That's absolutely true. I say the same thing in my own book. The scares like the population bomb and all the Malthusian stuff, it was all baloney. It was completely wrong. And now we are well below replacement birth rates in almost the whole world. The only places that we're not is certain parts of Africa and India. But don't you worry, the Gates Foundation is in there and they are working on it. So Elon says, for nearly a century, fertility rates have been decreasing globally. The result is what scientists are describing as a worldwide infertility crisis, which, again, we could theorize as to why. But there's a solution looming on the horizon: artificial wombs. In 2017, scientists created a bio bag that functioned as an artificial womb, and they used it to grow a baby lamb. They're always doing stuff with sheep and lambs and then convincing us that they're already there. Now a new concept has been unveiled exclusively to Science and Stuff. I thought Jimbob would love that this article is on a website called scienceandstuff.com.
Why not? Yeah, why not?
Why not? It's perfect. So Science and Stuff, showing how the same could be done for humans. In recently released footage, Hashim El-Ghalili or something shows what childbirth might look like tomorrow. And they have like a video simulation of the Ecto-Life artificial wombs. Now, isn't that interesting? The brand name is Ecto-Life. Do you guys remember me telling you about Lord Birkenhead 100 years ago saying we're going to have babies via ectogenesis? So clearly this has been a connected, worked on thing for like 100 years. The purpose of the Ecto-Life concept could one day supplant traditional birth. In so doing, this Dr. Crazy Pants said society would finally be able to meet the needs of parents who are tired of waiting for a response from an adoption agency and those who are worried about pregnancy complications. But most importantly, Ecto-Life could allow us to confront the infertility crisis head on. Now it goes into a section that talks about our need for a new form of birth. And it says, currently, the World Health Organization estimates that 15% of reproductive age couples worldwide are affected by infertility, and that over the last 70 years, fertility rates worldwide have decreased by a staggering 50%. Reasons for this decline include, among other things, women's increased education, increases in employment, the high cost of raising children, and a drop in global sperm count. 23 countries are already at risk, with Japan, Spain, Portugal, Thailand, and South Korea at the forefront of the crisis. And I'm going to disappear this just for a second and bring us back because Sorry, wrong
kind
one.
of
Here we go.
kind of adds another layer, Rachel, to the whole like the truther. The last couple of years of the truther sphere of the thing is trying to get us and they're trying to decrease the population. Let's look at the Georgia Guidestones, and you go why you're really going to get people down to 500,000. It's only the special people, and that was kind of fun to look at. But if you look at this next chapter, it kind of makes a little more sense if we grant that first part where
Right,
could you make men and women sterile and incapable of these things, and then only a select few, the select few now get the Twitter injection, the Twitter, what would we call it? Elon Musk is going to have his own hatchery for the blue bird that is Twitter. And so it kind of makes sense that they might want to catalyze.
Yeah, all of the Ectolife bio bags will have like a little blue bird like Twitter logo on them.
Yeah, they're going to revive. They're going to revive Ecto
Twitter stamp on his lower back.
They'll revive the Ghostbusters Ecto Cooler thing for people for propaganda and stuff. Yeah, that makes total sense now. The whole drop in the population isn't just a cultural thing. Let's say it was physical. Let's say there was some way to cause it in some weird way that we can't.
The same way they're turning the frogs gay. Let's say
let's say that. Well, it wouldn't be necessarily for suddenly like then it only leaves behind all the special people and they have their bunkers and stuff. That's not complete. What would be complete is the next phase of the technological revolution, which would be these hatcheries but it's not just the technology. It's that there's now a guiding unelected symposium of smarty pantses, the new Plato's Republic, the philosopher kings who are in the very justified position of authority to determine who gets to push the button on the hatchery or not. That's the key element. That's eugenesis, but through technology, right? It's not just like the old school kind. They always use technology, but this is like this is like the special people get to see human beings as like programs on an app. Like we don't want the bad programs on the app. We want the good.
This one has a bug in it. This one has a bug in it. I don't want this one. I
exactly. And they see the world, like some of these people do actually fundamentally see the world as, or at least human beings and the body as an operating system, and they're trying to remove or create bugs to fight other bugs and this kind of stuff. And so it's not surprising they would see it at a massive level, human beings as individual or groups of ethnicities as sort of like lag, a lag on the system. Yep. Not just like a lag on the economy, but a fundamental lag on what they deem to be the human trajectory, the human being as a body, as a species, not just the economy, like a lag. I mean, like they really think there's an uber mensch at the end that we're going to get to. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I tell people all the time, all of these projects and these secretive experimentation things that were being done around World War II, those things did not go away, you guys. Those things did not go away. They were moved and renamed. That's all that happened. And the plan has been going forth ever since. None of it has ever stopped. None of the MK Ultra stuff stopped. None of the Ubermensch stuff stopped. None of these things stopped. They are repackaged, rebranded. They get new PR. They're funded through like a foundation or an NGO instead of through a government thing, or they do Black Ops funding instead so that you don't really know about it, but they're still doing all this stuff. And so we're given all of these social revolutions, like the Skittles revolutions, the feminist revolution, and we're told that this, and then of course the mass immigration all over the world stuff of the last 20, 30 years as well, we're told that this is all human liberation. It's freedom for everyone. We just want everyone to be free and be able to do what they want. We just want liberation for everyone. That's the opposite. That's the exact inversion of what it is. And the whole point of all of this stuff is that the people, it doesn't matter if you and I believe it, the people who do these sort of things and run these companies and are pushing these things do believe that they need to overcome their human condition. They want to live forever. All you have to do, go to Moscow. I believe it's in Moscow now, I think, where they have Lenin's tomb. They have been preserving Lenin's body since he died in 1920 or something. With a lot of the like scientific preservation stuff we have and things like skin grafting techniques actually came from the preservation of Lenin's body. When this man died, they thought he was going to be resurrected as a messiah, and some of the richest private funded oligarchs in the world have funded the preservation. His body is like 89% plastic now, and they're still planning on bringing him back at a certain point.
Oh,
These people are
they're
crazy.
just carving they're just carving some pieces off him at a time and
Yeah,
replacing it with.
literally that's what they do. They have like this temperature control, like you should read about it sometime. It's wild. They've got,
Walt Disney's probably jealous. He's like, "What? I'm just sitting here.
he's like,
You guys
I'm
aren't
just
carving me
frozen.
apart."
Well, it was like there was competing like ideas of how to do this or whatever. But yeah, this is what they've done, and the Russian government pays for some of it, but most of it comes from private anonymous people who are planning on bringing Lenin back and resurrecting him someday, because he and a lot of the Russian oligarchs at this time were like cosmonaut transhumanist types too. So again, none of these ideas are new. They're all very old. None of it ever goes away, and it's because the same spirits, the same demonic spirits, are behind this kind of stuff. If you don't believe in that and you just want to discount me, that's fine. But that would explain the continuity in these ideas over centuries and eons, that these same ideas just never die and they keep coming back. So when we take a look at what Musk wants to do, of course, he wants to do Neuralink, he wants to do these artificial wombs. It makes a lot of sense why he wants to buy Twitter, why he is using, he's probably the best example of the future uh, way we're going to do things with this public private partnership stuff,
Yeah.
right? So, like, he really is kind of at the forefront of this. And if you didn't know, Musk's grandparents were the leading technocrats in Canada in the beginning of the 20th century. They were actual politicians and newspaper owners who pushed technocracy ideas in the 20s and 30s. So that's where he comes from. He's probably been preparing for this role for his whole life. And yeah, it's cool that he wants you to be able to say insults on Twitter. It's nice. Some of the stuff he's doing like can benefit us, and we will use it to our advantage to talk about the things we're talking about. But that doesn't mean he has pure intentions and just really cares about you and me. And this guy is having babies via surrogate himself. His last one or two, he's got 10 kids by like 5 different women. A couple of them were born via surrogacy, and they have names like Beep Bop Boop Bop or whatever, like unintelligible robotic type of names, like, oh, this is my son, the new XR54739. Like, just saying, he is like the premier technocrat. He is the guy who wants this future that we've been talking about. So
And he's
I want to
usually
remind you guys
he's
really
kind of
quick just to go ahead and send us dono chats if you want us to read questions or comments via the dono chat or the YouTube super chats. You can buy a channel membership. You can gift channel memberships. You can send super things. You can do all that stuff. So we would really appreciate it. If you want to support my grift, please send me grift bucks. Go ahead, Jimbob.
I was gonna say he never quite succeeds either. So he's much like a spokesperson who kind of rallies confidence in a potential market that's going to happen, and then it's sort of people forget he does some little blip, and then and you look at, but in perpetuity, does he actually succeed in what he does? He doesn't really. Kind of jump ship. He does this little thing, and there's a headline about it, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you connect the thing to your brain, and you smell the same potato," and then right, that's Neuralink, and then you move on to the next thing, and I think he mostly functions as that, but he is a perfect face for it. I actually wonder why it wasn't his brother, like you said, just like Bill Gates was kind of farmed and groomed to be the person he is today. It's almost like an obligation. It's like a right in that kind of world. And I wonder if there was like Elon and his brother, like they did like a rocks, paper, scissors to who's going to be the front and who's going to be the behind the scenes guy. And they maybe they chose wrong, because he's kind of doofy too. Like he really isn't. Yeah. He doesn't really sell the Iron Man Downey Jr. approach. He's kind of like he doesn't really get it out. Short. Yeah, he says a lot, and he just takes forever, And maybe that's like selling the genius, like, oh look, he's thinking, oh he's so genius, it takes so long for him to get something out. Maybe that's the draw, but he, the whole everything he does is very novel. Even like the flamethrower or the boring company or everything else he does, or if to me a fake car on a green screen or whatever. You realize that he is selling a trajectory. He's selling a trajectory of some path to people, and he ends up not being. He almost never ends up being the one who does the thing. He just kind of like he's like has a machete and he's carving a path and going go here. This is the future, guys.
Well, I think they also learned a little bit from the Bill Gates and the who's the Apple guy? Not Tim Cook, the one who died of cancer.
Jobs.
The original. Yeah, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were like Revenge of the Nerds, okay? Like nobody really thought they were very cool. There's the infamous video of like them trying to dance on a stage and they just look so embarrassing. And, Gates would come out and say things like, oh, we got to get the numbers down. We got to go in there with the stabby stabs and take care of this little human problem we've got. And he always sounded like this like mad scientist, Revenge of the Nerds villain. Was incredibly unpopular, and I think they thought they were going to have Elon Musk. He dated pop stars and actresses. He smokes weed with Joe Rogan. He made Tesla, and Tesla cars are what all the YouTubers drive. They get a wrap on their Tesla, and he's so cool. Isn't it cool? And it's like, I guess he's a step up from Bill Gates, but he's still
he still makes you want to punch Rick Moranis
exactly.
in public. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any other thoughts on like motherhood and technology, but I think it's just this bigger symptom of trying to disrupt God's order, crush it, and replace it with anything else. It's when I read these people, what I take away from it is they'd be happy with anything else. Anything other than what God designed is fine with them. They don't care what they have to do. It's just overall a bunch of whining, complaining about, I don't like God, he's mean. It was just like the debate Andrew had last night with the guy who hates religion.
Oh, man. Yeah, oh, wow.
He didn't make an argument in the debate, you guys. It was a long complaint letter to the manager. It's like he sounded just like a boomer Karen lady who's writing this. I'm going to write a strongly worded email to this company to let them know that I am no longer going to have a membership here and I won't be shopping here anymore. It's like, this dissatisfaction with life, how it is, with God. If I was God, I wouldn't do this or this. I would do something else. And you go, oh, really, what? And they're like, well, I don't know right now because I'm not God. But if I was God, then I would know. And so like it's this never dying, never ending urge to rebel against the natural order, against God the Father, against patriarchy, against hierarchy, against nature, and to be like, no, I'm the boss.
It really is. It's the I'm the boss thing, and the first step toward utilitarianism would be rejection of God. Because if there's no God, then it's only up to humans to figure out this world and get it to some utopian view, right? And so you go, you gotta get there, give me $400 and I'll buy the utopian land, or do this or do that, and it ends up once you go in that direction, there's no other place you can get to other than materialism. And so if materialism is your starting point and rejection of God is baked into that, anything you come up with as a solution won't include a spiritual hospital. Right. It'll be just do stuff and make it so people like things more and feel good things, right? And so you go, okay, does that include, the child abuser? What if the child abuser feels good things? Like, are you gonna? Yeah. You're not gonna include them, right? And
what about their feelings? What about what they want for themselves?
Right. That's why I asked him about the corpse when I called into.
That was
asked
great.
Andrew's opponent about the corpse. He didn't know what to do with it because his basis for the good was not harming, right? Anything that just didn't do harm. Well, what harm are you doing? There's families. That would be very disturbing. The family. Andrew's like, well, it doesn't have a family. The corpse doesn't have a family. Now what? And he didn't bite the bullet. You know why? only like a Vegan Gains or some of these other people who are willing to bite these massive bullets and just be the most nihilistic, dead inside
Yeah.
people. They can't bite the bullet because they know there's a spiritual element to them that they know there is good. They almost know that. I mean, from my position, they know there's God and they're just actively rejecting that, and then they just fall into these terrible positions, and that's something that needs to be explored more even in Christianity. Like, we don't just abandon utility just because like I speak against the end results of pragmatism and utility that are often present doesn't mean you just abandon pragmatic things or solutions to things, or you don't try to make something in the world that you believe is good. It's just that when that ends up being the basis, you get to really silly conclusions about what the world ought to look like. And according to this technological era we're in, we're looking at it. We're looking at Elon Musk creating a hatchery. That's the utilitarian end goal. Has nothing to do with practice or participation with God or prayer or spiritual. The degree they'll go to spiritual enlightenment will be like, well, we included in the app the Sam Harris's Mindful app, so that'll handle the spiritual element of the smart city. That'll be put in every pizza place, right, or whatever. It's unfulfilling, it's incomplete, it's incoherent, and it's not from a strong worldview. It's completely backwards. They have no telos, and it needs to be challenged a lot. But the challenge for us is, can we effectively I was going to say give a replacement, like what's the other solution? But it's a fundamental different paradigm. We don't have a material solution to a spiritual problem.
Right.
And so, but people want it. Oh, Rachel, tell me the solution. You're criticizing this stuff. What have you done? And the problem is you don't have the solution because it's an entirely different paradigm we're talking about.
Well, so that's what I often say when people accuse me of grifting, especially like, there's probably a lot of new people here who found me from Pearl's channel. So hi, thank you for being here. What I will say about this attempt to replace motherhood, to replace parenthood, and to kind of replace the human element of reproduction altogether. This is, like Lord Birkenhead said in the beginning of this, it's the feminist dream. It is the only way they can truly accomplish their goals. They are very upfront about motherhood being the enemy of every aim they have, which is why they don't care about any of the rights women have had. I take 3 chapters in this book to demonstrate to you all the rights that women had, to be able to own land, have businesses, write books, this idea that women could never speak, we weren't allowed to talk, we were denied an education. No, that's all horseshit. First of all, most people didn't get a formal education. It wasn't women, it was everybody. And college was only ever meant to be for like that top 5% of people, men or women. And generally women didn't do it because they were busy with the vocation of motherhood, which was still seen as sacred and sacramental and very important. And what this does is the vocation of motherhood. Uh-oh, I'm like echoing or something.
No, that was me. That was me.
Oh, okay. What this does by stripping women of the ability to be mothers and trying to, the other part of this technology is to extend fertility or the illusion of fertility into old age, which I talk about all the time, how irritating it is. Like, I was on stage in Nashville talking on a panel, and the host asked me what I'd like to see less of in women's media. And I said, well, for starters, I would like to see less Martha Stewart on the cover of, swimsuit magazines. I'd like to see less movies where J-Lo is 60 and we're still supposed to have the suspension of disbelief to believe that some 20-year-old dude is chasing her around trying to marry her. And she's like, I'm just not ready yet. Like every movie is J-Lo, no matter how old she gets.
I just don't think I'm ready for my... Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm just ready. Like, this whole thing of trying to convince women, and Pearl, one of the great things she does is by interviewing these women, they tell you they believe this stuff. They think I'm going to be sexy until 70. The girl on stage next to me in Nashville took her little mic and was like, well, I just want to let you know I'm going to be sexy at 70. That's what I have to say about that.
Everyone's like, woo! Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, what this does is it robs women of any hope of their salvation. Why? Because to be saved, if you are an Orthodox Christian, you will know you need humility and repentance. And what happens with women is we have this incredible power from about age 16, when we first start developing and the boys start noticing, to about, give or take, 25 to 35, depending on, how well you keep up the illusions. To a certain age, we have this incredible power that, if we had indefinitely, would damn us. It would absolutely, there's no way you could have that kind of allure and sexual power. Like, men will do anything for you just because of what you're sitting on, right? Just because of what you look like, just because of the thing you have that you were just born with, that you didn't do anything to earn or deserve. There's a reason why that power is temporary and short-lived. It's only supposed to be for this short window of your life. And by trying to extend that indefinitely, and then also taking away the consequences of using that sexuality, right? With abobos, with artificial wombs, with birth control, with all this stuff, trying to be a sex goddess from 16 to 86 means that we now have this culture of young women who are completely narcissistic. They are unable to accept even the slightest criticism. Nothing is ever their fault. They believe they are good enough just the way they are, and nothing about them needs to change. It's the world that needs to change, society needs to change, and the men need to change. All you got to do is look at Lizzo or women like her. They're not LARPing. They believe this down to their bones. And when you have that belief about yourself, you have made yourself unable to see God, unable to be saved, unable to submit to God, to the church, to a husband. The only thing you'll submit to is the dollar and to attention and to your own self-worship. And this is how feminism truly destroys women. And then these women have children. And how many men in my live chat right now were raised by a single mom who had these delusions or had this attitude, and she destroyed your childhood and then told you it was your privilege because mommy needs to be happy. So if you don't get to have a childhood, that, you should be glad because at least mommy had a job and mommy was sexually free and all her boyfriends could come and go and mommy got to be happy. And that's what really matters. So this is far more nefarious and insidious than I think people realize, because they don't have what Jimbob always talks about, which is telos. They don't have purpose. They don't have any sort of grand narrative that gives them an ought in life or helps them define truth in the person of Christ. Because why do you need that if you think you are perfect, blameless, and sinless just the way you are, which is what feminism deludes young women into thinking. So there's my rant.
Yeah, we also that it kind of points to this, and again there's all of the influences you mentioned, but then there's like this constant looking at the screens and the filters, and then it's not just young girls who think they need to now look like the filter, and they don't even care if it's fake. They're like, well, that's the standard now. Women get older, it's like Megan and I will go out and we'll see, like, if we see like a woman who's like in her 70s or 65 and she has purple hair and she's trying to do this like youthful thing, we just cringe. We just go, you're supposed to be the wholesome grandma. You could still be kind of wild grandma and whatever, free spirit grandma, or whatever. Yeah, fun grandma, but this thing where you're gonna be youthful and I think it's harder for women. Like you said, women's their peak, the youthfulness of women, and when men look at them to procreate, it's gonna be that window. Whereas men, they could kind of age more gracefully, let's say, and still be within the sort of marketplace of sex. At least, not that they should. It's just that's just a reality. But you watch the women try to sort of like force themselves into a younger generation by trying to act all crazy and the hair and you're just going, that's not how you gain the value that you could gain at your age. The value you have is is sort of a matriarchal position. Not to say I want a matriarch society. It's just that the powerful woman who's wise, who then teaches women how to be women and mother
Yes.
children, is a whole other thing. That we're just talking about mothers right now. I mean, that's how,
Yeah.
that just shows the problem that there's not even two generations, right, that we're critiquing, because we don't even have that second generation. We're trying to reclaim the first one, just the motherhood. But when you really look at what is lost and what could be gained by sort of reestablishing that line, you get the strong the father who's now a grandfather, and the grandmother, and they serve as the sort of they're in the hierarchy. And
Yes.
what do they represent? Well, they represent love. They represent that commitment, that how long that can go. Like, my parents are still together. That has such a profound effect on me. But it also represents something more than just durability of the marriage. It represents that my mom's not, she doesn't watch Eat, Pray, Love and go, "Oh, I need to rediscover myself. I'm going on a tour to Tuscany." And my dad's not like, suddenly he's going to start wearing like, hipster clothes and being like, "I never got to skateboard. It's because I married so young." He's not, because that and thank God they're not vulnerable, but some people are. They really think that there's this like, sort of like, they used to say it was like a middle-aged, what was it called?
Midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis. Well, that got to the quarterly level now, right? And now there's multiple. And I think it is caused by this kind of sort of worship yourself. Well, I need to have my fun now. And then the mom leaves and abandons the kids, or the father leaves, right? I need to be free. This is my sexual prime. Just because I knocked you up doesn't mean... I have to do this for me. I'll be resentful if I don't do it.
Right.
These are both weaknesses for the men and the woman. And it's really hard to battle the for the new generations. I actually have sympathy for them, because there's buckets of just self-glorification just being dumped on them, right? And they seek it, and they seek more of it. And it's I don't know how to intervene, honestly. Like, it's kind of like frightening for me as a father of two girls and a young boy, how my wife and I are going to navigate this stuff, because it really can't just be the stick, as Posh would recommend. Just use a stick. It can't be just that. So there's more, and luckily we do have these, our direct communities, but also online communities, and people like you are always in these kind of conversations, helping each other out how to navigate this stuff. Because to some people it might sound like we just have all the answers. We have our religion, we have our communities, we have what we value, but in practice it's not that easy. It's not easy. I mean, you have what, 21-year-old,
22 and 20, and both of them have messaged me in the last few days saying, "I really just want to get married and have a family. Like, my daughters are like not out there pretending that working a job is like their dream. They're just like, in fact, the oldest one did feel that way. Like in high school, she was like, "I'm going to show you, I'm going to go off and have an awesome job. And my life's going to be amazing." And then a couple of years into working, she called me and was like, "I get it now. I get it, Mom. This sucks. Why do we all go to work every day in an office and pretend like it's the best thing ever?" She's like, it's so stupid. She's like, "How did we fall for this?" And they really do just want to like find the guy and get married. But as I tell everybody, it's even for those nice girls who are trying to do that and are trying to attract that, like, they do all the right things. They're volunteering, in the community and going to church, and they're like, they don't party a ton or anything like that. They try to hang out with nice groups of people. It's still hard. It's still very hard for them to find men who are interested in marriage, because of all the reasons we all know, how risky marriage is for men nowadays, and how fear-mongered men are against it. Not without good reason. There's very good reasons. If I'm a young man with an analytical brain and I know math and statistics, I'm kind of looking at the current marriage situation and the current women who are out there, and I'm going, I don't about that. It's a tough sell. It's a tough sell for both, though. I think it's hard to convince both people. So I think the best thing is like you and Megan have a great relationship. Andy and I have a great relationship. And I think modeling that for our kids is a big step in the right direction because they know it's possible. Whereas most of my kids' friends, their parents are not together. I think one of their friends have parents that are still together. Everyone else's parents are divorced. I had a wonderful grandma that I recorded an interview with that's here on my channel if you guys want to watch it. The interview with my 97-year-old grandma about what life was like for her and what the dating world was like when she was young and how women thought back then. And it's nothing like now. It's nothing like now. Women were not always this way. Neither were men, by the way. But especially the big change we've seen in women, like my grandma was talking about what she looked for in a man when she was young. And she said things like, well, I wanted him to come from a nice family. I wanted to like his mother because nobody wants a mother-in-law they can't get along with. So that was important. I wanted him to go to the same kind of church I went to so we wouldn't have fights about how to raise our kids. He had to have like good job prospects so that I'd know that me and the kids aren't going to like suffer and starve. She said, I never wanted a guy who drank because my dad drank and that was never good. So I didn't want that. Like she did not say 6 feet tall, 6 figures, and a 6-pack. She didn't say anything like the things that women say now. And my grandma certainly, when she was like 18, was not running around telling everybody she was a 10. She's not like, oh, I'm a 10. Hell yeah, I'm a 10. I got it going on. She didn't think like that at all. She was like, boy, I hope I can find a nice guy to get married to, and her mother taught her that, her youth was temporary and that her fertility was temporary and that she's going to be old someday and that she had to think about those things. Like you had the older generations around you teaching you stuff, and we don't have that now. Most people now don't have like real grandparents. They have what like my kids. My mother wants nothing to do with being a grandmother. She's doing her hot girl summer in her 60s right now. She's got all these new tattoos. She's at bars. She's drinking all the time. She wants nothing to do with motherhood or grandmotherhood or anything. So I bring my kids around my grandma, my dad's mom, so that they can see what older women are like. And so they can be exposed to that because it ain't what my mom is, right? So I think a lot of kids are in that boat where you're talking about like the grandma everybody loves, the nice old lady that just like, how you'd go to your grandma's house and you just feel good. It's like everything is peaceful. She's going to bake you something and like tuck you in. And just like, I don't know, when I was a kid and went to grandma's, all my worries kind of melted away, and grandma's house was like this place of rest, and she's wise and she's kind and it's not busy and you're not getting yelled at. It's just like this wonderful place to be at grandma's house. And I think so many kids don't even know what that's like, and they don't have a role model of like, what am I going to be like as a woman when I'm 80? Or what am I going to be like as a man when I'm 80? Like we have no connection to our older generations. The parents aren't involved. The grandparents aren't involved. It's everybody's so atomized. So it's like everybody is just thinking in utilitarian terms, and scientism rules the day. And this is how we think of stuff now. So there is no greater reason. It's a tough sell. Like I always tell people, if I'm a grifter, I'm really bad at this because I'm not selling anything sexy. I'm like, work really hard. Be humble, have a lot of kids, and give up a lot of what you want for yourself to invest in the future generations that you might be building a chapel you'll never see finished. But do that because it's meaningful and it matters and it's worth it and it will get you through the really hard times. That's not a sexy message. Nobody wants to hear that.
No, there's no shot after that, right?
No.
And then just, drench your shirt with water and then jump on the bar and shake the ass. It doesn't come after that statement. That's interesting because that is like part of the difficulty is that there is in the utility, quick convenience world we're in, the push button, I got it tomorrow delivered. You don't have that with traditions. You can't. Like it's by definition not possible to have this sort of customized world. So you can't push a button and have it back to the grandma that you just presented and the full family in the order that you could imagine. There was a time when it was like that. We can't make that happen overnight. It takes it's a lot easier to destroy that than it takes to build it. It's way harder to build, and it's thankless. Like you said, you might not even see it in your lifetime. You might
Yeah.
not see it. It's like in our generation, at least in the West, we probably won't see it. We probably won't
Yeah.
see it where we get to that point where you and I, God willing, are 95, and hopefully neither of us have purple hair, and we go, wow, there's actually 3 generations in front of us right now, and
Yeah.
I'm the old grandpa in the garage with wiry hair fiddling about and burning himself with a soldering iron, and you're baking, and there that exists. But
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. It can't exist right now very quickly. It's a generational thing, and that's why this quick band-aid fixing, these impulsive political movements. It's a movement toward, there's a movement every second, right? From the
Yeah.
right and the left. Oh, it's a movement. We're on a movement. No, it's a very slow pace if you're doing it correctly, in my view.
Yeah.
It's slow pace, and God willing, we end up old enough to see our snail trail. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I mean, I always tell women like you like Megan, your wife is still even in the hard part where like all the babies are small and you have so many cute moments. It's not that it's not wonderful, it is. But you're also so tired all the time and you feel, when all your kids are little, you feel like, "Oh, I'm never going to have time to ever do anything. It's just going to be like this forever and I'm going to be perpetually exhausted." And it's a little bit tough in those years. And then you get to where I am, where you've got a couple who are adults and they're on their own, and you're like, hey, they turned out pretty good if I do say so myself. And your younger ones are like, older and self-sufficient. And now you're suddenly like, whoa, I'm about to be in a new phase of life that's going to be different than the last 20 years. And you do get your sense of accomplishment, and you get your break, and you get your sleep again, and all those things, you start to get more and more fruits as they get older. Not that you don't still always have worries and stuff like that, but it is worth it. But it's a long-term gratification thing. But that's what I was trying to allude to earlier, which is that that's good for you. I know that it's like me telling you to exercise and eat right. I know. It's not as fun as if I had a magic pill or something that would just make you skinny and hot and you could eat chocolate and potato chips. But that's how life is, and so like by doing motherhood the old fashioned way, I think it's important for women because it teaches us to value ourselves in a different way other than just our sexuality. And young women right now don't value themselves for anything other than my Birkin bag, my money I make, and my lip fillers and my boob job and my butt pics on Instagram and whatever. And it's like, it shouldn't be shocking then that 26% of all adult women in the US are on some kind of psych drug. Unparalleled alcoholism, which, by the way, is far more damaging to women than to men. It's much more detrimental to like our internal organs, our brain function, all that sort of stuff. It just hits women harder than it does men. And yeah, I don't like seeing what's happened to women. I don't like seeing what they've become. And I'm always trying to talk them out of it. It's an uphill battle, but I'll just keep going, I guess.
exactly.
Well, so with that, maybe we will take a look at some super chats and some dono chats and see if anybody has questions or comments for us. So, Column Rack, thank you so much. A big supporter over at the Crucible too. Sends $5 and says, atheism is the ideal capitalist religion as it commodifies everything, including the individual and religion. That sounds like one for you, Jimbob. That's kind of your jam.
I mean, I don't think I have anything to add. It's pretty concise.
Yeah. Okay, over here on the dono chat side, we have $5 from Wicked Wally. Wicked Wally says, and the machinery that takes over all heavy labor will identify as men.
Yeah.
That's true. And then we have $3.99 from Dr. Vagisil. Thank you, Dr. Vagisil. He's a OG Church of the Eternal Logos donor. He says, tech has been abused by women to inflame men's sexual passions. Seek a woman who is nurturing, charitable in love, edifying in speech. If you show peace, wisdom, and protection, You allow her to share her treasure of femininity and motherhood. I totally agree with that. That's certainly what happened with me and Andrew. I can be a little tough and a little rough around the edges for a woman. And although I have a very motherly, very like nurturing side to me, I can be a bit of a bull in a china shop. And I think having him being the Marlboro man, bull in a china shop, he is himself, it really helped me to like relax and feel okay being a little bit more feminine and vulnerable and motherly and virtuous, if that makes sense. So I agree with that 100%. Neurojack sent $4 and said, every time I go to the stores or any office, the women look progressively more and more miserable, looking at the phone and bored, etc. It's getting sad and ridiculous and frankly uncomfortable to see. Yeah, like that's my thing is like, Not So Erudite said recently in a debate, she was like, women are rocking it. And I was like, are they though?
Crushing.
They're crushing. She was like, they are rocking it in her like little way that she talks. And I was just like,
No.
Chelsea
Handler is not. You know what you do? You look at the eyes. You look at the eyes. It's they never.
Yeah, well,
I can't tell you what it is, but you can see it.
There's so many memes where they've taken a picture of some woman protesting with crazy eyes. There's just women with crazy eyes abound. It's just like you
Isn't that funny? You never see a picture of like the loving traditional mom holding the baby, and she's like she has the crazy like. You never see it. It's always like like someone holding a sign or they're protesting somewhere.
Yeah, they're always like it's crazy eyes. It's a real thing, and I've seen enough before and after feminism pictures of women, and I know some in person in my own life, and it's sad. Sabrina Fair sends $20. You win the Dono Chat Award for tonight, Sabrina. Thank you so much. You're always so supportive, and I totally appreciate you. She says, great stream. I wish I could meet women like you and forge friendships. God bless, and can't wait for your new book. Well, I'm hoping that as my little channel and my little following grows, that a lot of the women who follow me will meet and have support. It has happened a bit. There's a few girls I made friends with early on that have all gotten to know each other and help support each other, because honestly, one of the biggest problems with getting women to buy into motherhood again and take the leap to be moms is they don't have any support. We don't have our own mothers helping us. It used to be like in my grandma's day, like her and her sister and their friends would all be having babies at the same time, and their mothers, everybody lived within a few blocks of each other. The mothers were all there. The grandmothers were all there. You had church ladies and everyone knew each other, and you had so much support. So when a lady would have a baby, like everybody would pitch in and help and take care of her. And there was lots of support and lots of just women around you who were doing the same thing. I know my experience, and a lot of the women that I talk to say it's incredibly lonely. It's really lonely sometimes to be the mom who's the stay-at-home mom, because all your friends have a career, all your friends are working. They don't really relate to you anymore. They're still going out late and having drinks, or waking up hungover and going and having champagne brunch or whatever. And it gets lonely and it's tough. So if we can form some community of women who do want to be moms and be more feminine, be more traditional, and aren't buying into the feminism stuff, that would be great, because Lord knows we need each other and we need the support. So and then there's just one little question right here. I wanted to see, how do you handle criticism from husband? I feel like I still struggle emotionally with that. I will tell you that me as a woman, it's tough because we are trained not to listen to that, right? So even if your husband is giving you the most constructive criticism, your initial knee-jerk reaction is always going to be, well, but what about what you do? Or me, what about this thing that you said, or this thing that you did, or you're just being mean to me? Like our initial knee-jerk reaction is to push back immediately, because we are trained and conditioned that men are mean to us, that we can't trust them, that they're going to do something bad, and that we're perfect, right? We are beyond criticism. Men always ask me, what's your best advice for picking the right woman? And I always say, if you can find a woman who can take a little bit of like constructive criticism, like if she's being a crazy bitch, right? And you're like, honey, I think you're tired, maybe. You seem a little off today. Maybe you should go take a nap. If the woman can take that and kind of look at herself and be like, yeah, I guess I am kind of overreacting today. I am being a little bit out of pocket. Any woman these days that can take any criticism at all, she's a keeper, in my opinion, because I feel like that's the number one thing. They all just believe they're already perfect, right? And so it might not even be your fault. You might just already have that conditioning built in to immediately have a comeback for anything your husband says. My best advice for that is just wait. Like if your husband is giving you some criticism and it's coming from a decent place, like he's not just totally being a dick for no reason, but he's giving you some criticism that has a purpose, even if you're emotionally like about to react, like go sit with it for a while. Just be like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go in the other room for a little bit and think about it before you react and see how that works. Because that's what I used to do. And now it's not so bad. Now I don't take it that way. But it does take practice.
Keenan says, in turn, JB, how do you criticize your wife? What's the secret? I don't use words. I do this. Ready? It's just like this.
He just gives her like a death stare.
So
just
that's
so
it.
You know you're fucking.
Yeah, husbands out there, learn your death stare, and it'll resolve a lot of issues.
No, I mean, you just have to remember that a lot of this is programming and conditioning. It's so much of it is. Like, think of every sitcom you've ever seen in your life. The husband is a bumbling idiot, like Peter Griffin, Homer Simpson, Ray Romano, Al Bundy. Like every sitcom dad is a bumbling retard who can't even get through the day without ending up in jail or destroying the entire house or something wild. And the woman always has to go, I don't know why I put up with him. He'd be lost if it weren't for me. I guess I'll just come in and save everything. And there's literal pop songs that say you're perfect the way you are. Girl, if he can't handle you at your worst, he doesn't deserve you at your best. You guys know all the tropes, right? So a lot of it's probably just conditioning that you have to kind of work on breaking. And just remember that men aren't conditioned that way. Men get told their shit from the time they're two. So, like boys don't ever go through this honeymoon phase of everyone thinking they're great. They learn from a very young age that they have to provide value and follow the rules and they have to respect the hierarchy or they get the shit kicked out of them, right? So men don't have that same struggle the way that we do. So a lot of it's just conditioning to learn that sometimes your husband's going to have constructive criticism that you do need to absorb it and sit with it and go, do I do that? Yeah, maybe I do. I have a famous story about throwing a remote control at Andrew once when we first started dating. He said something slightly off, and out of my own bad habits that I learned from my parents and everything, I whipped a remote control at him, and he just looked at me like, oh. He was just like, if that's how you are, I'm not dating you. So I'm going to go home now, and you can think about if you want to be the girl that throws shit at me, but that's not for me. If that's how you are, I'm not going to do it.
I have to mention this too, and again, I don't recommend this in every situation. You have to use your discretion. But Megan says our most valuable relationship hack is quote moonwalk conversation ender. Yeah. So if one of us is in a fit, and you know that they just have to be with themselves for a second and they'll get over it. If someone snaps at the other, the person who got snapped at, we do this thing where we just back away robotically, like a moonwalk, out of the room, and it ends up being very comical and it breaks the ice. Almost 99% of the time we start laughing and we're like, we're not even good at fighting. But yeah. Again, I'm not suggesting you guys might hear that and go, it's the most intense fight ever, and someone does a moonwalk out of nowhere, it might not go well. I'm just saying, that's just our thing. So icebreakers are good. Yeah, icebreakers are good. We
have one. Do you want to hear ours? Okay. Did you guys ever see the South Park episode about the BP oil spill? Where BP has this oil spill and the executive has to come out and do the PR commercial, and he's like, "We're sorry," and he's laying in a field of flowers and he's like, "We're sorry," and then he's laying on a bearskin rug on his stomach in front of a fireplace and he's like, we're super sorry. It's just like this hilarious skit. So now sometimes if Andy's like mad or whatever because I screwed something up or I like totally forgot something that he told me that I should have remembered, and he's like frustrated, sometimes if he's like getting worked up and I want to break the ice, I'll just be like, we're sorry. And he doesn't want to laugh because he's mad, and he'll be like,
Yeah, any of those icebreakers are just laughing. Good. Yeah, you might have your own thing. That's like Keenan writes, have you been having an affair? Moon walks out of the room. Yeah, it might not work as well. It could be your own thing that happens. I mean, with our kids, it's different too. We have I call it eyebrows up. My kids will be angry, and I just go eyebrows up, and they can't keep an angry face because their eyebrows end up going up, and it doesn't go with an angry face, and they end up giggling or just like they hit me because they know I broke their commitment to
being mad. Yeah, I like karmas here too. For my husband and I, we do the Jordan B. Peterson thing where we say, so what you're saying is you hate all women. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, you got to come up with stuff like that because 99% of the fights that you get in with your spouse, you will not care about in 5 years. You will not. So like we learned that early on, and we try not to do that too. But yeah, well, I like the Megan and Jimbob marriage advice a lot. So you guys should like maybe consider doing more of that because it's pretty good. The moonwalking is great. I'm gonna do that. I'm stealing your moonwalk.
You would never expect that to be in some sort of like marriage book, counseling book. Like, why would chapter 3 be learn to moonwalk out of very like tumultuous conversations? It doesn't make any sense on the surface, but it makes sense in practice every single time for some reason.
Wally says all these women using technology and reading is concerning. It's true. I do. So as much as you might think the feminists hate me, the like super groiper incel guys also hate me, and they'll be like, if you're not a feminist, why are you existing? Just like anything I do means I'm a secret. Like, oh, you have a book and you're not a feminist. And I'm like, women have been writing books since like the 1300s or something, but that's fine. Whatever. All right. Well, I've kept Jimbob long enough. He's been here more than 2 hours. Thank you so much, Jimbob, for coming on. You're one of my favorite streamers to watch. So having you on my channel has been a great treat for me. And I thank you so much for coming on. Remind everybody again. Oh, I just blew everyone's eardrums out, whacking the microphone. Remind everybody where they can find you when your ban is done.
When my ban, well, you can go follow at Made by Jimbob on YouTube until it'll be another week and a half until I'm back on there. In the meantime, I'm at the Crucible Limited channel, streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Instagram, Made by Jimbob, and madebyjimbob.com, where you can support with buying books and goodies and stuff. And thanks for having me, Rachel. It was a great topic, something worth exploring, especially as some of these technologies start emerging. Let's say if they do, and they start making their way into the economy. Definitely something to revisit in the future for a stream, especially looking out for those Twitter hatchery pouches.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Twitter baby farms for Ukrainian global baby making machines. So with that, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Get a membership on your way out. Send me a super thanks. Hit the like button. Do all the YouTube things so that I can continue my ruthless grift of telling women to be humble and, invest in the future and not in booty pics. So thank you all. Love you. See you next time.